Why not? Somebody has to run. There's been a lot of challenges. Certainly, I've been heavily involved personally with the transit issues. And looking at that from a Monday morning quarterback is, oh, a decision's been made. Wait a sec. That's not, that's got such serious implications. And then we have to fight to change it. And I thought, I'm at a time in my life personally, it's time to join the team and stop those decisions from being made in the first place and having a fulsome discussion. And I just thought, you can be critical for so long, but at some point you have to also step up. And that message was carried to me by some people in the community as, okay, you want to make these changes, then step up. And sure, I'll step up. I think it's totally fair to say that the population that I encounter as the Executive Director of the United Way feels without a voice. From those initial discussions a few years ago around the new rec center and economic accessibility, we go to great lengths to make a building physically accessible. What are we doing to make a public space economically accessible? And bringing that to a public meeting and having people come up to me afterwards going, thank you for bringing this up. I don't want to speak to this as a person. I'm afraid I don't want to be seen as a burden in the community, through to the whole transit issue with people who take transit for economic reasons, accessibility reasons, environmental reasons. There's so many reasons to engage and use the transit systems that we have in the province, good or bad or mediocre. And what I find when I come out and say something and advocate for a population, that population kind of comes behind me and says, thank you for saying this. Also, did you know? And I'll get phone calls with stories that people will say, you can share the vagueness of the story, but this is my story. This is why it affects me. And people come to me because I've used that voice, and I'm honored to carry those stories forward for those people. Well, there's a lot that can happen for the city to economically thrive, and the challenges that we're faced are not unique to Owen Sound. They're not something that is caused by this area. It's not something you can't pinpoint to something and say, oh, if we had painted the road lines yellow instead of pink. There's nothing tangible like that. It's something that's happening to rural Ontario. It's something that's happening to Ontario in general. Globalization and the impact on the global economy is huge here. So what I think the opportunities are to look at the innovation, this whole web economy, what's available there. The harbor's an issue. What can we do with the harbor? How do we keep going with the harbor? How do we compromise with mixed use as to what's happening, the industry of a harbor, but at the same time the mixed use, recreational use of a harbor, and we've got to find that middle ground for everybody. And I think what we need to understand as an economy is that we need to look at it regionally as well. So if we looked at just the city proper in terms of income levels, yes, they're significantly lower than the outlying regions. But when we look at why is that? Well, we've got more affordable housing. You can buy a house on city services, for under $200,000, 1,200 square feet, it's my house, and live. Anything outside the city is much more expensive. You've got services and transit here. So you tend to attract people of little lower income because you've got the services like transit. So you can live, our living wage study that we did is $16 for the rest of the counties, but you can do a living wage between 14 and 15 in the city because of transit, because we can get people around. It's not great and it could be better, but at least it's here. So I think from an economic point of view, we need to look at disposable income, because a small business economy runs on the disposable income of the workers in the community, so that matters. So keeping every well-paying job matters to the community, and advocating and being that noise in Ottawa and Toronto. When we started doing utility assistance, they knew my name in Hydro One, downtown Toronto. They didn't like it very much.
We meaning the United Way?
No, me. Me being me.
Okay,
And when they expanded that program, across the province, we were one of the first expansion sites because we'd made the noise and said, we need this here. We're very tired of programs being run out in cities and the larger urban centers in Southern Ontario along the 401 corridor, being that noise and saying, we have a constitutional human right to have access to the same services as the rest of the province. Education is the biggest piece to reduce poverty-based shaming, blaming, and all those pieces. So if we educate the community, so people who come out, let's talk about the Tim Horton downtown crowd, why don't they have jobs? Well, how do you know they don't have jobs? We have shift work in the community. We have an incredible amount of precarious work, part-time, low-wage jobs. So why are we blaming and shaming people for being low income when that's the only option? We have people that are involved in our services at the United Way that are working 2 and 3 jobs and are still below the poverty line because it's 5 hours here and it's 4 hours there, and it's just not enough to cobble together. So by educating the community as to what the realities are, I posted the new income guidelines around Ontario Works and Ontario Disability and what people actually get when they're on those government services, and people are really stunned. It's very easy to stereotype. It's very easy to look at low income people. Well, they get their housing paid for, they get this paid for, and they get that paid for, and that's just not the reality. Because it's much more comfortable to assume the stereotype than it is to actually look at the reality and look at how people are living, and they're doing their best, and we've got to celebrate them as volunteers. They're involved. The number of people who help out at Summer Folk, who help out at all our special events, and who attend because they can't afford the entry ticket to an event, but they're certainly capable of helping out and they want to help. The backpack program that the United Way runs, the parents will phone, I need a backpack for my kid, but we can come in and help build them too. That needs to be celebrated as not as a burden to the community and to the city, but as part of the tapestry. They can make that change. When we worked on the bandstand project, there was a concern because we decorated the Friday night for the Saturday opening that the street people are going to trash the decorations. So we went to Safe and Sound and we said, okay, can you give us 2 people that we would compensate to stay overnight in the bandstand? And it was the bar crowd that was a concern, and we only had 1 person who walked by at 2 o'clock in the morning who was out of the bar crowd that was that concerned. But the people who live on the streets, who inhabit this downtown that everybody is so icky about, they were the ones sitting there keeping an eye on it because they love that project. They saw the beauty and the vibrancy that came back to that park from doing that project. So by engaging everybody of every income and giving the people the ability to participate, that's huge. Make them part of the solutions around the city as opposed to labeling them as part of the problem.